right. So I'm Josh Rich. I'm here with Jay Lamont Harris. Jay, how's it going?
Hey man, today is a wonderful day. Today is the day that we've been gifted. Today is the day that we continue to lift lids. Today is the day that we share, Josh.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm really excited about that. Definitely lifting lids. And Jay, what I would say to you is that, I've looked back over the last 6 months or so, and I've had people continue to reach out to me and ask questions about the Another Seat at the Table program. And with getting those questions, people said, hey, this is a great program, but there were still some things that we could do to make the program, I think, even better. And so, as we're here today, I'm excited to announce that not only are we making those updates to the program, but we are announcing ASAT 2 and the DEI game, a comprehensive facilitator solution that are coming together or that we're bringing together. So what do you say about that?
Man, I am so excited. And Josh, as you know, we've been accountability partners, working in silence to bring all of this to the table today. And for us to take ASAT 2.0, again, a comprehensive facilitator solution, a business in the box, and combining it with the diversity, equity, inclusion game, the dimensions of diversity, where they complement one another. This is exciting for not only for you and I, but also for for the hundreds and hundreds of facilitators and trainers in the DEI arena and
That's right.
professionals that are touching organizations. We said that no longer are we going to participate in the days where you just check the box and you watch a video or you see 2 or 3 posters in the break room and say that we now have this illusion of inclusion in the workplace. We're going to do something about it. And, there were literally thousands of people that reached out to you, both you and I, and said, hey, when are you going to do this? And,
Right.
and Josh, as your accountability partner, I said, hey, Josh, what are you going to do, man? How are we going to change this? And of course, you came up with the concept of the asynchronous learning model, the testable material. I'd like for you to share just a little bit about ASAT 2.0 because I personally, as a tester, have said, hey, let's tweak this here, let's tweak that there, and you were just all over this thing. So let's talk a little bit more about that ASAT 2.0.
Right.
And the unique changes there.
So again, I think that with the initial rollout of ASAT, it was a starting point. And we felt like it was a great program. There are a lot of benefits that were there. But because it received so much traction and people felt so good about the information, specifically the PCIHO model, and really how groundbreaking and shifting that was for the conversation as related to diversity and inclusion, there was an opportunity to dive even further, into making this program just a solution that so many people could be able to utilize. So what did that mean as we went back into the lab, so to speak, and continued to make these tweaks to make it even better? That meant that we looked at what was happening in the marketplace. A lot of companies, a lot of businesses, they were saying, well, because of the last year and unfortunately dealing with COVID-19 and really trying to stem that tide, and in that way, they were doing so much more virtually. And so we know with the ASAT curriculum, that's something that is able to be facilitated virtually. But what about those companies after they have that initial training? What about those that wanted to do a self-study? Was this a program that was available for people to really go off the shelf, so to speak, go online and complete the learning in such a way that it was done with that asynchronous model in mind? At that point, it wasn't fully there because we still needed to have those quiz questions, the check on learnings that needed to occur for that end user. And so today, we can say that that is now a part of ASAT 2. And so for our speakers, trainers, facilitators, the coaches that are going to have this program and the updates that are along with it, they will be able to go to their clients and say that we have a ongoing model. Okay, we have an ongoing self-study program that is now available that can be utilized. So I think the merging of ASAT 2 as well as the DEI game, those together are going to really help to spearhead and really continue to trailblaze these courageous conversations that need to happen as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, Josh, I submit to you that the words that we both have used was being technically and tactfully proficient in the delivery, not only of ASAT 2.0, but also in the dimensions of diversity of the game,
Right.
To help those facilitators, have those courageous conversations and help individuals to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's right.
We've created tools of awareness. And again, when I look at the game as a whole, the game was designed to create awareness, utilizing prompts and interactions. And everyone who's played the game have walked away with an awareness of their own personal biases, additional knowledge about team members, and able to make adjustments to just their environments based on the findings of playing the game itself. So with the program itself, ASAT 2.0 and DI game, we have a lot of add-ons. Those add-ons would include surveys, which we can have pre and post assessments of organizations and businesses. We're adding on TOT, a train the trainer, so that facilitators can feel comfortable doing teachbacks live with our faculty to just to feel comfortable in that delivery. Additional items that we added on was proposal writing. We're finding right now in the DEI arena that there are many RFPs that are out there available where companies and organizations and even government entities are requesting for DEI services. Well, someone needs to know how to write a proposal, how to submit a proposal. And one of the things that we included in the packaging is we're going to show you how to write and submit a proposal. I think that's astonishing. I think it's beautiful that we can share all of these things.
I agree. And so, as you're talking about this, I think it's good to have examples of people that have had success with doing just that. And, Jay, today we have the opportunity to speak to, one of those people. We have Stephen Crawford, who will be joining us here in just a few moments. But Stephen is going to share his story, how he did just that. He took those RFPs that he was seeing, and he was able to write to how diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically through the ASAT curriculum, was a game changer for him and for his business, and how they're able to lead these conversations and really help a lot of people. And so we'll be hearing from him in just a few moments. But I think that is so important for people to be able to understand, because we have people that are listening right now that are speakers, trainers, facilitators, they're coaches that, let's say, for example, are specifically geared towards leadership training. But what we know about Another Seat at the Table and what we know about the DEI game is that these are programs that can be shared with other curriculums that our business owners that are part of this group and so forth are going to be able to utilize to make an even better product when they're communicating with their clients. So I think that Stephen is a great example of how to really pull those things together.
Yeah, I think Stephen brings a lot to the table. We use the word another seat at the table. Stephen definitely has a seat. He's been a pioneer in this arena. Since 2011, Stephen has made tremendous strides and contributions to not only the DEI arena, but also to leadership training as a whole. And as you iterated, packaging not only DEI, but also other leadership and training or entities, it's just, it's just seamless. It's a seamless process, and it all makes sense.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to speaking with Stephen.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and bring Stephen up.
All right. Sounds great.
All right, and there we are. So, Stephen, good to see you. How you doing?
Dr. Stephen Crawford. Hey,
Excellent.
man, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Good.
Awesome, man. We know that you are shining lights in Minnesota right now and doing some wonderful things. Wouldn't you agree, Josh?
Absolutely. And so that's why, it's so good to have him on and just to be able to share, some of, his story and so forth. So, Stephen, if I understand correctly, you have been full-time in business since 2011. Am I understanding that correctly? Okay. And so prior to starting with your current business, can you just give us a little overview of what it is that you were doing?
Yeah, we were running a nonprofit. As you know, back in the 90s, there was all this strategic planning that came out of the book Built to Last, and a lot of corporations decided to do strategic planning. And Eli Lilly wondered what would happen if they added that value into the nonprofit world. And so, and having a degree in urban studies, one of my professors got hired on as an executive director and decided to bring me on to help do some of the teaching and training and leadership and helping them understand issues of diversity and within other nonprofits. And 7 years later, I became the director, and I was leading an organization. We had about 60 different teachers, trainers, and interns going all around and adding value to other nonprofits.
Wow.
Going into the Great Recession, I would put it, and things got shaken up from there. But that's the background, is being originally from Chicago and moving to Minneapolis and serving in the community, really believing that we can have an impact on the world.
Got it.
Yeah.
So even, at that point, I mean, I heard you talk about diversity. Diversity was there, even for the nonprofits. That was something that people needed to be even more aware of. And so after your work there, you started your company and had that going in 2011. And what was your focus at that particular time?
Well, I wanted to step away a little bit from a lot of the diversity training because I think the conversation got so convoluted with so many other agendas, and it sounded like it wasn't about equal respect and treating people with an equal lens. It really became more about who agrees with me, and I didn't want to just be pigeonholed into this. I think tolerance is a great thing. It just means we civilly disagree with one another, and we can still sit at the same table. That's what it means to tolerate one another. You don't have to tolerate someone you agree with. You already agree with them. So for me, I felt that because my degrees were in leadership, that I really wanted to have an impact in training up leaders and coaching and training leaders. So doing a lot of corporate training for about 4.5 years, with a little bit of business coaching, and about 3.5 years into that, we kind of flip-flop where I started creating a local market kind of for the small businesses that were here locally, and doing more coaching and training with small business clients. And so kind of left me with a higher degree of direct to leader one-on-one coaching is kind of where our career took us. But I knew we couldn't last like that because I only have so much time, so much capacity.
Sure.
And so if we were going to really bridge into the organization that I had a vision for, we were going to have several coaches, but we're going to have several trainers, and to be able to broaden the umbrella was kind of a goal. So for the last 3 years, we've been trying to really fight to get into that corporate space again, to be able to do training and development.
Wow, training and development, that's big right now. I know that when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's become a CEO problem, in my opinion, where now I'm seeing more CEOs, more leaders of organizations and companies attempting to get on the dance floor. So what impact has that made with your company and the vision and everything that you're doing right now as a team?
Well, I have to say that we tried to get in for the last 3 years. We've been knocking on a door with our leadership training and leadership programs for a long time. And we've had different marketing strategies, different things like that we were trying to get into the conversation of helping promote and train and develop people. But it turned into a lot of white noise for the most part. And it was when we really bought into another seat at the table, when we really started saying, let's reinvent our diversity program, and let's lead with this as a conversation starter to see what would happen. That people, now you have to culminate it with, we're in Minneapolis.
Right.
Death of George Floyd happened on our streets with our police force. But doors began to open, not to leadership training at first, although it did end up there in many cases. And I guess we can talk about that. But
Sure.
When we led with another seat at the table and a conversation on diversity and inclusion, we start to see cracks in the door and conversations that hadn't been open to us prior to that begin to start, which was really, really exciting.
So you see those conversations as being at the forefront and probably a valuable tool?
No, absolutely. I mean, I know that these conversations, many of them would not have even begun. And much of our marketing strategy is a lot of times email campaign. So they didn't know who I was. They hadn't looked at our website. They didn't know that we were people of color. It was just simply the fact that someone was willing to help have a conversation. And we shaped emails directed towards, let's have a conversation about this. And I have and that opened the door to the conversation, whether it be a leader in the sales and training department, or whether it be with the CEO themselves. They began to open the door and say, let's have a conversation about this. They wanted to know more about us as an organization and what we could do to add our voice to that conversation that they were really struggling internally to have to talk about.
Yeah. And, I would just say, respects to the Floyd family and so forth. I mean, Minneapolis ended up being the epicenter, unfortunately, in 2020 for a lot of the activism and so forth that came out of, that unfortunate situation with George Floyd being killed. So, understanding that aspect of it, certainly people are looking, or in my experience, a lot of companies made statements and said, hey, we are supportive of this. We want to be diverse. We want to be inclusive. But it seemed like they didn't really know, well, how do you really have these conversations? Because these are difficult conversations in some ways to have if you're not really accustomed to really talking through the subject matter that's going to come up as a result of that. And so I think that that's really important to note as well. So it sounds like once you made that shift, that when you were putting forth that, hey, we have diversity inclusion training, you were using another seat at the table, and you were really leaning into that as a tool that you could use, that was something that helped to open the door for people just to have a conversation and to be intrigued more about who you were, because it sounds like this was something that differentiated you maybe from some of the other companies that were in your market.
Absolutely. And I would dare say, when we look back at the numbers, we didn't cut off our marketing of the leadership training and development. And so when we were looking that direction, we would get probably one response per 4 responses that when we led with the diversity and inclusion. I mean, that was about the ratio of conversations that really began to lean into us. And as people began to search our website, and they saw obviously the link that we provided for them was the page that was provided for another seat at the table, but they began to search around it, and they had other questions, even to the point where when we got to the conversation about meeting with them, they didn't remember that it was really the diversity conversation that started the whole thing. They just want to know about us. Tell us how you guys are helping people. And I think that the unfortunate thing, and I'm just speaking with a representative from a company that's over 100,000 employees that's based here in the Twin Cities. And the person that I was talking to said that, and she was a person of color, and she's leading the initiative to get us in front of their audience. And what she said was really interesting. She says they just handed anybody a microphone when this conversation around diversity. If you're a person of color, they hand you a microphone. And I just have to be honest, I felt uncomfortable being in the room. The way in which they were having the conversations was completely not consistent with where the conversation, many people of color feel the conversation should have gone. And so that's where we have to be extremely careful. And for many companies, it says they regret hiring certain companies to bring in this conversation said that the problem was that they had already hired them before the George Floyd thing ever happened.
Okay.
And so they were fulfilled, but it sped up the initiative. So they have people that only understand the voice from certain communities and not a holistic approach. And what I like about another seat at the table is not about white shaming, which is one of the most difficult things that happens within diversity trainings. White people feeling guilty. Guilt does not motivate change. And if all we want to do is make people feel guilty about the last 400 years of racial oppression, the last couple thousand years about sexual identity and other forms of oppression and ridicule. I mean, we can go there, but it won't change anybody's behavior. The people who are resistant will clam up, and what this curriculum does, and it specifically the BCIHO model does, is it opens up the conversation and gives people permission to be exactly where they are.
Yep.
And invites them about the possibility. And when we led the conversation, when we did get those conversations with that we're not here to shame anybody, to make anybody feel guilty. We want to give people an honest opportunity to assess where they are and invite them to consider moving up a level. That began to be the winning ticket that says, you know what, we've been waiting for this conversation. They've been hearing a lot of noise, but this is the conversation that we've been waiting on. And that's what really began to stir up a lot of people. In many cases, we went through 3 and 4 interviews before we got the contract with different people. And we have several big contracts that we've been able to secure, and several that are still on the pipeline that are people are really excited, but the momentum has not shifted, even though the intensity around the conversation has waned.
Right.
Maybe it's gone up a little bit because the trial of Derek Chauvin is going on right now. So maybe it's gone up a little bit, but it waned quite a bit. But the intensity of our conversation and us adding our voice to that picture has continued. I would say at a pretty sustainable level.
Man, that is powerful. I agree with you 100%, and I can add a whole lot more because that model itself, it lends itself to self-awareness and self-identity. You know, every time that I look at it and every time I facilitate it, I'm always seeing where people are at one level and they want to get to the next level, and then they realize their biases even at the lowest level. And at the highest level, they have blind spots. And so, the model is just, it's awesome that people can recognize it, but it's also great that they can walk away with something, that awareness. That's the biggest thing. And the white shaming, Stephen, I agree with you 100%. There's no room for that. Let's talk about where we are right now. Let's have a seat and let's talk about it. Let's have an open discussion. And so what you just shared, I thank you so much for the transparency. And one of the things Josh and I like to throw around are nuggets. Okay. And you just threw out some nuggets, brother. Somebody's gonna hear them. Deaf ears will hear your words today because your words were very, very powerful and very intentional. And thank you so much for sharing that, Josh.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And so, I'm really echoing what it is that Jay just shared in that sense, because just kind of, talking through something else that I heard you really mention, and I didn't hear you say it by name, but when it comes to marketing, A/B testing, right? And so as business owners, we need to be mindful of, well, what's something that's really resonating with people versus something that isn't. And so you talked about, hey, when you led with diversity inclusion training, you were getting 4 responses. When you led with the leadership training as a standalone, it was maybe 1 response. But then there was crossover, right? When they went to your website and actually looked at your other service offerings, then they were like, wow, this is a really complete, company in that sense that can help us in a number of ways, aside from the diversity inclusion training. And I think that's important because for a lot of, the folks that are in our audience, they have different service offerings that they've been doing, whether that's leadership training or something else. And so for them to be able to understand that adding this as a part of their service offerings, that's going to be a benefit to you by and large, because then you're having a program that many other people, they don't have at this particular point. So I think that was really important to highlight. So thank you for sharing that. But just overall, I've really appreciated this conversation and being able to just really unpack what your experience has been. We're sending continued well wishes to you. Keep on trailblazing, in your market and even beyond, in this country, because we need this to happen. And then the last part that I would just point out is the white shaming, right? There are a lot of raw emotions that people have as it relates to race. And a lot of times people think of diversity and inclusion training as simply being a race type of training, but there's so much more that goes along with that. And in order for us to truly see the change take place on the level that we want to see it, we need to have these quote unquote courageous conversations, which means that for companies, we got to get uncomfortable in the sense that, yeah, we may talk about some things that otherwise may have seemed to be a little taboo, but with the right facilitator, and I'm seeing this with you, Stephen, with the right facilitator, you can have these conversations. It doesn't have to quote unquote just be taboo and something that people can't talk about, but we can really move the needle of understanding and really start to make changes within their workplaces. And who doesn't want to work in an environment where they can feel appreciated, feel connected to it, and feel like they're really being seen, and ultimately that they belong. So thank you, for being able to share that.
My pleasure. And I guess I want to share one more thing, because if all we do is go in and do a training, whether it be a half day, full day, we would be able to do that. You get paid in a corporate environment for the hours, the training hours that you perform, and that's great. But what we're able to pitch with another seat at the table is using the training as an impetus, just as a conversation starter. And then people will self-identify, because when you look at, and if you know the curriculum, you understand that hesitators are often people of color that feel like they've worked and earned what they got, and they don't want to talk about race because it brings attention to the fact that maybe they didn't get it because of their intelligence, or they didn't get it because maybe they've been they've kind of affirmative action their way in, and so people of color don't like really talking about it. One, because they don't believe things can change, and so what we find is that the people that raise their hand and start identifying themselves as people that want to do something about it aren't often the people of color. They're really other people that says, you know what, I realize how lending my privilege and lending my social capital will take advantage. And so now, if they agree to that, if that company agrees to that, now you don't just have this one-off training that maybe happens once a year or however long, but now you have an active group that you can run a mastermind group or a mentorship group with to help empower them, to help shift the language within the organization. And the value of that contract, if you stay on as a partner, is vastly more valuable than just that one-off training that if all you were doing were marketing your leadership training, you would have gotten a 2-hour first-time managers. They set you in a room and do a 2-hour teach these people how to lead training. Now you've got a relationship, and it's able to dig deeper and deeper in depth. And I'll just say that one of the contracts that we won was the public defenders for our state. Which, that office has over 900 attorneys that have to go through this training now. And they're looking at doing about 55 at a time. And they want us to come in and do orientation. And they have us training now all their chiefs in leadership. So, I mean, when you look at how far this can spread throughout the organization, it can be fantastic and fascinating. I think the opportunity is endless, and we don't revel in tragedy. We have to be honest about there's some tragic things that have taken place, and we don't revel in that. But it is certainly something where if good people don't stand up and say something, then the loudest voice in the room will dominate. And what we've seen is a reaction, one side yelling cancel culture, the other side yelling something else. And when you see all of this craziness, it's going to take some sensible people to step up. And that's why I think it's so important that the right people step up, embrace the curriculum, understand the process, and help to deliver an opportunity that will give people reason, ration, and a civil conversation that can help move us forward. because it's time for these old arguments. It's time for them to die. And unfortunately, they're getting more intense and more aggressive. And it's time, but it's only going to happen when good people can raise up and say something. So
that's it. That's it. Well, Stephen, thank you again for coming and sharing your experience, your perspective, and really that call to action that you just put forth there. We need good people to step forward to be able to share their perspective, share their skills. So many of our audience are very skillful speakers, facilitators, trainers, and they can do this. They can do this, but they just needed to hear perspective like the ones that you're sharing and others that are going to be talking here. So thank you again for that. And look forward to continue to hear more about the progress that you're making. And again, we're sending well wishes to you and your team with the great work that you all are doing there in your state and beyond. Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So Jay, we just had a great conversation with Stephen. What stood out to you about what it is that he shared?
Man, one of the things with Stephen and his sharing today was that his success did not happen overnight. And even with our program, as dynamic and brilliant as I feel that it is,
right,
the resources that we're providing, it does not guarantee overnight success. Stephen put in a lot of work. He made a lot of connections. He collaborated, significant collaborations, not only with government entities and businesses. He monitored exactly what he was doing. So that really stood out for me, especially being right now in the epicenter, of what we call racial equity. In Minneapolis, the George Floyd trial is going on right now. So that stood out, significantly to me. The other thing that I thought about, Josh, and I'd like for you, to kind of chime in here, was bringing everyone to the table. Everyone can show up authentically as themselves. And through this program that we have now, where everyone can actually facilitate and participate. Can you just share just a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I heard Stephen say that really clear, that everyone has a voice. And I think many times when it comes to diversity and inclusion, people believe that you really have to be of a certain ethnicity or a certain background and so forth to be able to speak. And what we say is that, that's not it, right? Every one of us has a voice. Every one of us has life experiences. And every one of us that are listening to this right now can lend that voice to diversity and inclusion. And so what do we mean by that? When you have the ASAT curriculum, there are stories that are included there. And so like, those are my stories, right? The life experiences that I've had. But through the community that we are developing here, and for those that are signing up for this program, what you're going to receive is live feedback from Jay and I, as well as other leaders that are in this space to help you to be able to identify, well, what is your story that corresponds with this particular section? Because when you can take that story, personalize it, and then share it, I think that it takes on a whole different level of meaning when you are speaking as the facilitator. Along those lines, Jay, I also believe, and, I tip my hat to you, with this, because this is just, it's amazing. The DEI game that you put together is going to help people to really level the playing field. Because, I've had people that have reached out, quite frankly, and said, well, hey, I am, of this ethnicity. And so people are looking at me and saying, well, how can I actually lead a conversation about DEI if I don't know about, in a very personal way, the experiences that people of other races and ethnicities have gone through? And what the DEI game does so beautifully is it really allows people to really look at their own stories, but to be able to hear what it is that other people are dealing with and find that common thread. When they find that common ground and people are having to share, for example, when they were the only minority within their business and they're having to share that, that really levels the playing field because everybody has to be reflective of those experiences. And so I know that's something that we'll talk more about, but I think for those reasons, what it is that Stephen shared and what we're discussing right now is going to be inclusive in the truest sense of all of the speakers, trainers, facilitators, and coaches that have this curriculum or will have this curriculum. So I'm so excited about that, Jay.
Oh yeah, Josh. One of the things about the game, when we, during the creation, the goal was to create opportunities for cognitive awareness and also cognitive dissonance. And when we look at both of those, we were able to bring in various groups in vetting the game, various groups from C-level suite executives to frontline workers, individuals from various religious backgrounds, ethnicities, sexual orientation, various ages. And we use these different groups across the board and just to vet the game. And again, documenting everything that we did. The outcomes that we had were significant. We utilized pre and post assessments, and all of this. We use all of the data to drive any tweaks or anything that we needed to change as it pertains to the game delivery. So one of the things you shared was inclusiveness. Well, everyone that has participated, and I thank God so much for this. Everyone has participated. We have nothing but positive feedbacks. Even in blind reviews, there were positive feedback. In our face-to-face reviews, the same thing, where individuals came out sharing information that they didn't know about themselves and or their team members, and even their own biases. So we're taking this game and we're pairing it with an outstanding platform of ASAT 2.0, because now, even when we look at our PCIHO model, even before we get there by playing the game, we know who our pioneers are. We know who our champions are. We know who our influencers are. We know who our hesitators are. And unfortunately or fortunately, we know who our obstructors are going to be.
Right.
And we're able to help those individuals to move forward. But the biggest piece here is awareness and conversations.
That's
not
it.
Arguments.
So you just mentioned something else about the assessments. And so when we talk about the opportunities for just making the program better, that was something else that we looked at. That was some of the feedback that was received, after that initial launch last year was, hey, do we have some additional assessments that we can share with an organization so that we can really help them to get a pulse on what it is that their employees are feeling as it relates to diversity and inclusion efforts within that particular organization. And so now we have surveys that people that are going to sign up for this program that's going to get ASAT 2, the DEI game, and then now they're going to get these surveys that can be utilized. And we need to make sure that the information that is being shared, that is measurable, right? And so because we're able to measure that now we can lead in with those conversations and with the feedback in terms of what it is that we found by working with their team members that, hey, this is what we're seeing. And those surveys are going to share a different story, in that sense. So what would you say to that, Jay?
Well, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to be very brief and brilliant in what I'm going to say. And what I'm going to say is that when we built the surveys, we wanted to use the data to drive what's actually happening with the organization. So not only for pre-assessments and post-assessments, but for our facilitators, before they go in to actually engage a group, they know the pulse of the group.
That's right.
Ahead of time, before they even get there. They can report back to the leader and say, this is what your group is saying, where you had this illusion that you have inclusion and diversity and equity in your workforce, and it truly is not existing because this is what your workers are saying. So we have those surveys, and not only do we have the surveys, Josh, we're providing training on how to collect the data, how to utilize the data, and then how to document the data so that you can report back to your client to say, this is what your data is saying, and these are the recommendations for our next steps. So the data is very big, utilizing the various surveys that we have. that will be included as a part of DEI the game and ASAT 2.0. You'll have this as a resource. And I think that this is something that each and every one of our facilitators and team members will be able to put in their toolbox and pull it out and utilize it in a very formidable fashion.
So, we're thinking about that, and that it means so much to be able to lead a conversation with that data, right? And being able to speak to those clients to let them know, hey, this is where things currently are. And now when you come in with your solution as that facilitator to say that through this program, we believe that we can help lead that conversation and get you this type of outcome by raising that awareness, by helping to develop the empathy and showing them the opportunity that is available to make things better in their workplace. Because let's face it, who doesn't want to work in a positive work environment, right? So when we are able to tell that story, it just adds so much value there. And so, as we get ready to close up for today with this wonderful announcement of ASAT 2 and the DEI game, bringing that comprehensive facilitator solution, we want to say for our group, okay, for this group, Lionheart HR members, you're going to have an exclusive offer between now and next Saturday, April the 17th, to be within the first 30 people to sign up for this program. And you're going to get everything that we've been discussing and more. So for additional information about that, please reach out, and you're going to see the email here in just a few moments, but reach out to admin at Lionheart Mentoring. Okay. So reach out to admin at lionheartmentoring.com for more details. And then we're going to continue to bring you more information over the next few days as it relates to this particular opportunity. But we're really excited about this. So happy to be working with you, Jay, on this. I think that we are just scratching the surface on what it is that's available and how we're able to help move this conversation to action in so many organizations. So anything else that you would just add for those group members?
Josh, again, we've only scratched the surface. There's so many additional resources, so many more additional resources, include training and supports that we'll have live calls. We'll have SHRM recertification provider, application assistance to work with individuals. We have different delivery platforms that we will be providing training, such as Mentimeter, Prezi, how to utilize those online platforms for your delivery. I mean, it's so many resources that we have. But the last thing I just want to close with is that I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one any day. I'd rather see it than to hear it. And right now, we are not only talking, but we're walking our talk every single day. And this group, Lionheart HR, we have an opportunity, but we have a greater responsibility in the DEI movement, in the professional development and training movement. We have an opportunity, but as I reiterate, we have a greater responsibility to lead.
That's it. That's it. So happy to, again, be working with you, Jay, on this. I think that we're going to be able to help impact a lot of lives. And I would just say for our group members, just understand that you're not in this by yourself. Okay. You being a part of this program and really taking this next step. We're going to be here with you. We're going to have some ongoing training that's happening. You're going to be able to present different aspects of the curriculum. And then we're going to give you feedback based off of our experience presenting this information, so that when you're stepping before an audience, whether that is virtually or maybe even in the near future in person, whether you're stepping in front of either of those audiences, you can feel confident with the information that you're going to be presenting. You can feel confident leading the DEI game and those other aspects of ASAT 2. So with that, we're looking forward to continuing this conversation with you, working with you. We think that, again, we're just scratching the surface, but we're looking forward to working with you through this process. So thank you for tuning in, and more details to come.